how Perpetual Hunger came to be, I never intended to write any books.
Yeah.
I got approached by the Global Minister of Entrepreneurship and Economic Development and Strategic Partnerships from the United Nations. And he said, Pat, you got to write a second book. That's how Perpetual Hunger came to be. He said, the corporate world is going to flatten. You're going to have tons of new entrepreneurs. And he said, they need a book. That's it.
Wow. That's a great way to, and you write about that in the book. I read that you kind of, you preface that a little bit in the book.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Most people don't pick up on it. I actually wrote that book, the majority of it, in about 7 weeks. I wrote 30,000 words of content, writing around the clock.
Wow.
I could see the whole book in my mind when I opened up my computer on January the 1st, 2016.
Awesome. Well, okay, do you go by Patrick or Pat? How do you want me to, either one?
Whatever you like.
Okay. Well, I'm talking with Patrick Tinney here, the best-selling author of Perpetual Hunger, Sales Prospecting, Lessons in Strategy, and also the author of another book that was actually his first book. That's Unlocking Yes, Sales Negotiation, Lessons and Strategy. Man, I'm so excited to have you today, Pat. Just a home run for this podcast to get someone of your caliber and your just the passion you have for sales. I can see it in your writing and just the history of your over 30 years in the media industry of all industries. That is a true sales training ground right there, the print media of years ago. So I'm excited to have you today, and want to just jump right in. And one of the first things I wanted to talk about was prospecting and the changes that you've seen. Let's talk a little bit about, let's go back to your early days in prospecting versus, a 10-year, 15-year, maybe 20-year timeline of prospecting, and what changes you've seen over the years.
Well, we get less face time with customers.
Yes.
I was a guy, I was educated just outside of Toronto in a city called Oakville. I lived in Hamilton, 20 miles down the road. I had no money, and I would hitchhike back and forth to school every day through the winter.
Yeah.
And what that taught me at a very early age, and I was just one of these people, kids, if you will, that just love the whole idea of talking to people, especially older people. So, I did every kind of crazy job you can ever think of as a kid. And some of it was economic. Lost my father when I was 9, and I had to go and shovel snow to make money. I did everything. Yeah. I picked worms. I did everything you can think of, to delivered groceries, So when I left home, I moved from Hamilton to Edmonton to take my first job in the media business. That's 2,700 miles away from home. And I didn't know anybody. I just went out there with one of my buddies from college. We rented a big apartment. We had no furniture. We had no clothes. We had no money. We had one car. He would drop me off in my territory, and I would walk all day in a 3-piece suit in the middle of the summer. And I only had 3 shirts, so I had to make sure I rotated my shirts nicely. And I would just sell all day. And at the end of the day, around 4 o'clock, he'd come up and pick me up. And then I'd go back and I would process the advertising that I sold that day. And then we go home, we'd do that all over again. So I would make I can't even tell you how many calls I'd make, because I'd be just walking into retail outlets, any business that I could see. I'd just walk in the front door and say, "Hi, this is what I sell. We do great things.
Yeah.
We can bring your business to life."
Yeah.
And I wasn't afraid to fail. Failing isn't failing. Failing is when something awful happens. An iteration is an advance.
Right. So a lot less face time with people today, obviously. When you do your consulting and when you talk with different companies around not only in Canada, but in North America as well, what separates the really good prospectors from the ones that are so-so or mid-level in the companies that you see? What are what are the things that you see from those salesmen and women that are just really good prospectors?
Ah, that's a great question. Um, do you know what I think it is? I think it is taking the time to understand the customer's culture, what's important to them, where they are, where they want to go. Go look at their website, talk to their competitors, find out as much as you can so that when you actually pick up the phone and talk to them, you don't sound like some person asking questions. You sound like an insider.
Right.
Go around to their warehouses, talk to their warehouse people, go visit their stores, talk to their employees.
Yeah.
Do something bigger. Embrace positive risk. Pick up the phone like it's your best friend. It's not like, it's not the fear factor to me is kind of, maybe it's just because of my age. It just doesn't matter. If you don't get a sale, it's not because you weren't a good salesperson. It's just because, they might have a good relationship with the vendor they have now, and it might be a long time to close that sale. I was in the long close business. I've seen sales take a year to close.
Right.
Now, if you're selling, things that are small and, there's no risk involved in it or anything like that, then yeah, just pick up the phone and just keep motoring through and see what you can sell,
Right.
But when you get into bigger items, like when you get into the millions or even the hundreds of thousands of dollars, all of a sudden you have to de-risk the sale. So the conversation becomes more of how can I help you get from where you are to where you want to go?
Right.
How can I help? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm in the equipment leasing industry. So it's a very, capital high, like you said, very high amount of money. So the sales cycles can take 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, because these companies are going to make decisions for, hundreds of thousands of dollars over a term or just a one-time transaction. That's very expensive. I like the way you put that, de-risking the transaction.
Well, think of it this way. What if you bought an expensive piece of software and you had somebody talk to you in software Greek, and then you went home to your wife and you said, wow, I just bought Zippo. She goes, Zippo? What's Zippo? I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll wait till the Zippo guy comes in and he'll explain it. That's, to me, that's the problem. You want to, when you're selling the kinds of things that you sell, long lease, bigger lease, you have to de-risk it to the point where the person that you're selling to can sell it internally and do it with great confidence, because they know John's going to show up rain or shine.
Right. There seems to be this focus now as well. And you've probably seen it much more than I have, but the prospecting is focusing on the customer now and talking about them, making it all about them. When I started back in selling back in the early 90s and the mid 90s, here's your brochure, go out and make a bunch of calls, tell everybody how great you are and how great we are. But that seems to totally has shifted to, you really need to have your focus on them and not you. And you talk a lot about that in the book.
Yeah. The big change happened around the year 2000. And you see, from about 1950 up to the year 2000, we had what was known as a seller's market. In other words, there were too many buyers and not enough sellers. Everything was being rebuilt after the Second World War.
Right.
New technologies developed during the Second World War. All kinds of cool cars were coming out in the 50s, in the 60s, and it just got better. Clothing was important. If you didn't dress a certain way, it was like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Now, fashion is kind of like, I don't know what it is anymore. I used to be a fashion-forward guy because I worked with large department stores, large fashion outlets. And so we all understood what it was. But now it almost seems like that's changed. And so now you've got people competing with you from all over the world, John. You didn't have that. So now you have too many sellers and not enough buyers. This is called a buyer's market.
Right.
That's the shift.
Yeah. And you talk about that in the book.
Yeah, it's really important. And if you understand that up front, then that gets your head in the right space, because I don't mean to sound glib here, but I'm almost incidental. It's all about the client. And if I don't perform at a very high level for the client, then I've let them down.
Right.
That doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah. You talk a lot about in the book, and I really thought this was pretty cool in the book. You talk about a SWOT analysis, and everybody knows about a SWOT analysis and what it is, but when you put it in perspective in the sales aspect, rather than just a marketing or, hey, what are our strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats? But when you put that into your sales process, that can be a game changer. So talk a little bit about that. And is that something that you developed over the years and actually utilized in your sales process?
Yeah, great question. And you picked out one of the most important parts of the book, by the way. I just can't get away from the SWOT analysis, because here's the thing. If you understand your competitors' weaknesses and threats, you know where their soft points are. When you understand their strengths and opportunities, you know what's going to go in their proposals. If you understand your customers' strengths and opportunities, then the opportunities are that gap that you want to fill to help them complete their mission. If they've got business implications, which are weaknesses and threats, you want to try and help them plug those if you can. And that may be a way to sell in as well. But, I prefer not to talk about pain points as much anymore. I mean, they're there, but if you're operating as a company, you don't know what your pain points are, you're in rough shape.
Yeah.
And the hardest thing to do is to do one on your own company, because nobody wants to talk about their own company's weaknesses. That's a mistake.
Right.
And so I triangulate the customer, our competitor, and us in a SWOT analysis. So for me, that helps. It helps me think in SWOT, because when you think in SWOT, you're always traveling around those. There's 6 points in there. There's 6 touch points. And once you start to think that way, I can do it on the back of my napkin sitting in somebody's front office.
Yeah. I was thinking about that too, as I read your book, was, a SWOT analysis on myself.
Yes.
As a salesperson, as a sales professional. I
just did that. It's funny. I've just built a masterclass, which I will be, I've got a US partner right now. I got some people in Canada, and I'm talking to other people around the world. And one of the things I kind of say to people, just to get ready for the masterclass that I teach them to certify them, is do a SWOT analysis on yourself or your career. See what you come up with.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can't lie to yourself, or if you are lying to yourself, look out.
Yeah. How good in today's world, 2020, how good are the organizations and the companies that you work with? How good are they at teaching prospecting? If you were to answer that, hey, how good are they at training their sales people, whether they're new, tenured, or whatever, at actually prospecting?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I'll come at it a slightly different way. I'm not sure that all companies have a benchmark for their salespeople. In other words, a certain level that they must understand sales at, as opposed to hiring people, dropping them a seat, handing them a phone, putting them on a Zoom call. To me, I just think it's one of the biggest challenges right now in business, because I don't think that a lot of companies even think about that. It's like having a philosophy around selling. So I try to articulate a philosophy in Perpetual Hunger about how you have to acclimate your mind to get ready to go out and talk to anybody. And so the philosophy that I explained there may not work for you perfectly, but if you take pieces of it and add in the pieces that are important to you and really match your personality, then you can go out and you can talk to anybody.
Right.
It doesn't matter. Just try to think like an insider. Try to be their best friend. What do you got to lose?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's where the preparation, you talk about that as well. I know I'm not as good as I should be in the preparation process, the upfront work that has to be done to be a good prospector. It's kind of like hitting golf balls on the range. You know, you got to do that to go out and be able to play well.
What you want to do is you want to be able to understand your business, your products, your potentially new customer to the point where you can unscript. So you're just thinking in the present. And you can talk about a proposal. A proposal might be something that's 8 pages, might only be 1 page.
Right.
You know, I think sometimes, and again, this comes back to the buyer's market now. In the buyer's market, things are slowing a little bit because nobody wants to make a mistake. You know, buyers don't want to make mistakes. You know, and everybody's working hard. You know, I talk to my, my buyer friends. They're hardworking people. You know, they deserve our best.
Yeah. How important is, and it's kind of becoming almost a buzzword now. I know Jeb Blunt talks about it in his book, Fanatical Prospecting, and you talk about it in Perpetual Hunger a little bit, but the concept of blocking time and having that prospecting block, that block to, and that's not an original thought or anything, but it's a matter of, hey, whether it's 30 minutes or an hour and a half, if you're not managing your time, you're going to struggle when it comes to prospecting.
Time is your most important facility. It's your equity. Would you take money and go burn it in the backyard?
Yeah, no.
Well, why would you burn time?
Right.
That's it. You know, Jeb talks about time blocking, and I'm a big fan. Jeb's a great guy. I kind of look at it in a slightly different way, and this is going to sound funny, but I go back to an old Brian Tracy book where he talks about eating frogs.
Yeah.
That just busts me up. So I'm a big fan of eating frogs first thing in the morning. Get as many back as you can get, because all of a sudden, once you've eaten those frogs, you go, oh man, I'm loosey goosey. It's like you talk about playing golf. That first tee box is killer. You can ruin a whole round by shanking a ball.
Yeah, I've done that many a time.
You can take out somebody's windows too.
Yeah.
So that's really important. And I think the other thing that's really important, by the way, John, is to have great empathy for your customers and their time.
Right.
In other words, don't walk into a restaurant and try and sell them something, at around 11 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
Well, don't do that. Get up really early in the morning while they're prepping. Go in there at like 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the morning. Or go in, at a time when they're not really serving a lot of people, which might be like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right.
If you have an important person that you want to get to, Mark Hunter is great at this. He's got it all figured out. He kind of thinks that if you want to get to somebody really important, figure out when you believe their meetings will be ending. So he likes to kind of insinuate that you should probably call somebody at around 5 to 4, 5 to 3, 5 to 2. So you get that, or 10 to 2. So that they're probably coming out of a half-hour meeting. They're defragging. They're getting ready for their next meeting.
Right.
And you got them. Or call them first thing in the morning. Like call at 7:30. I used to work with so I used to call on Walmart head office in Canada. I did so for a long time. And I knew that if I had a problem, that my buyer would take a call at 7 o'clock in the morning, because he left home at 4 because he didn't like driving. in Canada's rush hour, our Toronto rush hour. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen the 401 highway, but at
No.
its widest, it's like 16 lanes.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah, it's like arguably the busiest highway in North America.
Wow.
It's big. Yeah. We gotta, because Canada's linear. Okay, so we're east to west. There's not a lot of north to south,
Okay.
and so everything has to travel that way.
Huh.
Yeah. So this guy, he hated driving rush hour traffic. So I knew he'd be at work by like 6:30 or 7. And if I really needed him, I could pick up the phone, call Fred, and he'd pick up the phone. He'd go, "How's it going?" I say, "A little problem here." "Got a couple of minutes?" He'll go, "Yeah, sure." Rip it. And that's the cool thing about, understanding your customers. Some people work late at night. And, for some people, that's prep for the next day. For some people, that's their creative time. And by the way, cut out time to be creative. Whiteboard. If you don't own a whiteboard, buy 2 or 3 of them. Just, if you saw my whiteboard here right now, you'd just laugh. I mean, it's just covered.
Yeah.
And there's a great book, Tim Thurston. Where's the here? This book.
Think Better.
Think Better. Tim Thurston, an American who moved up to Canada. And he, so Jeb likes to do a thing called murder boarding.
Yes, I've read that. In his book.
Well, Tim kind of goes the other way, and I agree with both gentlemen, by the way.
Yeah.
And they are both gentlemen. Tim says that if you work on a problem long enough, you will exhaust yourself. You got to stay with the same problem, and you got to stay and you got to work at it and work at it and work at it until you're exhausted. And when you're finally exhausted, that's when the good stuff happens, because you're loose.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Sure it does.
Makes sense.
Sure it does. I mean, you look at the back to golf for a moment, because I see you're wearing a wonderful shirt.
Oh yeah.
You think about when Tiger was loose. He was unbeatable. He could will the ball into the hole. We've watched it.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of confidence that you want to have as a sales prospector. You want to be loose. You want to be happy. Live in the moment. Don't worry about the future. Don't worry about the past. That's gone. You can't fix everything. You can only fix the present.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the things you talk about too in your book that and the book was written, I think, back in 15 or 16, right around that time, Perpetual Hunger. I think that's about the time.
16.
And you were talking in the book back then about how important content creation and how that helped you in your career as a sales professional create content. So I just wanted to talk about that a little bit and get your thoughts on, I think there's a big movement for that in the sales profession, and for most professions, is to be able to create that content. How do you see a sales professional using content creation to help them sell?
So I'm going to come at this in a slightly different manner.
Okay.
One of the things that I recommend that salespeople do is become a specialized generalist. In other words, sales is a panoramic view. Sales prospecting, consultative selling, sales negotiation, they're all bolted together, right? But there's within what you sell, there is that vertical where, so in my particular case, being in the newspaper business, I was in it for 30 years. While everybody was going off and studying marketing, I went off and studied how the machines work. I became a certified print production practitioner.
Okay.
2-year program to understand everything. So that gave me the ability to understand how all of the machinery could work outside of the norms that my company was using them.
Right.
Yeah. I actually said to the company at one point, we know we're making money on the insert business, the stuff that goes in the center of the newspaper, but I'm not just sure how profitable we are and how we calculate profit. And so I ended up on a pricing strategy committee for the company. And of course, I took on inserts, and I sent out a survey across the country, and everybody was calculating costs differently. So once we understood that, then we understood the profit by newspaper. And then that allowed me to much more flexibility, because then I knew where I could stretch and where I couldn't. But
Right.
people weren't thinking that way. I actually wrote
You were doing a little bit of split testing, really.
I was trying to do everything I could do I was trying to find non-conventional money. You've always got to have this one thing over in the corner where you say, you know what, it looks a little weird, but I think we can do it. And customers love edgy stuff. Like if you take something new into a customer and say, you know, I haven't shown this to many people yet, but you're kind of cool, so I'm going to share it with you. Look what we're going to do. Do you want to get involved? Do you want to be part of a test? Content.
Right. Yeah.
Content. You know, people are talking about writing native content. In the old days, we called that advertorial.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I really think content's important. You know, and even in writing the books, I mean, you don't write books to make money. You
Right.
write books. You write books to give to your community. You know, somebody said to me one day, they said, "Hey, Pat, you charge $24.99 for Unlocking Yes." I said, "Yeah." He said, "You must be making a pretty good buck on that book." And I said, "I make a little bit of money." But I said, "Let me ask you a question." He goes, "Yeah, sure." I said, "It took me 7 years to finish that book. Would you work for 7 years for nothing?"
Right. And here's the power of books. For $24.99, I don't care if I paid $299 for Unlocking Yes. I'm going to find 1, 2, or 3 things in that book that exponentially covers that money return.
100x.
Yeah. I mean, the books are your best investment, I think, for the return that you get. And you know, when you're reading Perpetual Hunger, well, there's dozens of things in here that I can implement right away that are going to cover whatever I paid for this book exponentially. And I think people need to look at it like that.
I've got a friend of mine, Jun Chang, who's he's out in the West Coast, Washington State, and he laughs at me. He says, "Pat," he says, "$24.99 for Perpetual Hunger? Are you kidding me? $24.99 for Unlocking Yes?" He said, "What a joke! What a joke!" And his book is soaking wet. I mean, he's highlighted. You know, he said, you know, I get a big kick out of people who highlight books because I do it.
Right.
It's a way to embed your thinking, so that if you highlight a book with a certain technique, and then you say, "Geez, I got to go back and find something," rather than looking in the index, I'm just flipping through the book and I'm looking for my highlights.
Right.
And I also write in a format, in lesson format. So I decided that when I started writing, that the world was becoming a smaller think world. In other words, time is our greatest commodity. So why am I going to sit around and read 5,000 word stanzas to try and understand something?
Yeah.
All of the lessons in my book, and they're lessons, they're not chapters, are written in 1,200 words or less. That means
They're real short, real concise. I like that about it.
simple language.
Yeah.
I wrote it at about a grade 11 level.
Yeah. And then you have the exercises on certain chapters, I thought, which were beneficial as too, for anybody really in the industry can go through there and gives you at least a start to kind of get the concepts embedded in your brain and what you want to do.
Can you imagine if you bought Perpetual Hunger for your sales team and you went through one lesson a week? Just one.
Right.
Or you went through one exercise a month. Just one. How fast would that team level up?
Yeah, very quickly.
Yeah. And that's back to benchmarking.
Yeah.
You see, this is, you know, I think that a sales company or organizations, they got to have some kind of a philosophy around what selling really means to them. Because when you have a philosophy, you can always fall back on it. You have somewhere to go. and also process. Now, I know everybody's gone process crazy. I try to keep my stuff a little simpler. But I do believe that if you, and this is me being a little bit of a gearhead, but if you understand the circular motion of a sale and the customer enters that sale from the wrong direction, which they do all the time, are you prepared to handle that? It's like back to the panoramic view: prospecting, consultative selling, and negotiation. So you pick up the phone and you say, man, I'm time blocking. I'm going to do some prospecting today. So you get on the phone with somebody and they love your Zippo or whatever it is you sell.
Right.
And they said, I'll take 1,000, but I need a 10% discount. And the person prospecting says, oh, I'm not negotiating today. I'm just prospecting. That doesn't go well.
Right. Yeah. Now, one of the things I found interesting too is that, you know, back in the day, the sales channels that we had were on your feet and a phone. You know, I carried a pager and, you know, would find the nearest payphone to return a call when I had someone to call back. Today, you've got the phone, you've got texting, you've got your social media, you've got email. You have a lot of channels. What are your thoughts? And when you're training these Fortune 500s or mom and pop companies, the wide range of companies that you talk with, what are the best channels, for a lack of a better word, or do you need to figure those channels out for your industry? Because there's so many right now. And how does a sales professional go about saying, okay, I want to prospect? Is it a blend? Or is it, hey, hone in on the one or two that you're really good at or your customers hang out at and prospect that way?
Yeah, you know, boy, you've asked an elegant question there. I see a lot of retailers using Facebook, smaller retailers, some of the larger ones too. When you're talking about enterprise sales, not there. You know,
Right.
you want to be up on LinkedIn. You want to be using Twitter. You might think Instagram. I tend to move more between LinkedIn and Twitter. I have a Facebook account. There's a couple of things up there, but you know, it's just a different environment. And you know, one of the things I think that people have to be really cognitive of, if you're gonna spend some time up on LinkedIn, which I think is not a bad idea, as long as you're using your time wisely.
Right.
Think about your LinkedIn profile as a de facto resume, because people are going to go check you out.
Right.
And don't put junk up there. You know, be playful. I mean, don't get me wrong, but you know, think about the idea that you're a walking, talking brand. The minute that you got on air with me, John, within 5 seconds, you made 40 decisions about me. You did. So what are people thinking on LinkedIn? What are they thinking about content when you produce it?
Yeah.
Have you noticed all the news anchors? All their hair is growing. My hair is growing. I haven't been able to get a haircut. And so all the news anchors are saying, hey man, look at your hair.
Yeah.
This is an amazing experiment that's taking place right now, you know, in this marketplace. And I'm going to get off topic here, but I just think we need to be more helpful to each other, a little kinder, listen more, because people are going to go through troubles.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of people out there right now that are just having a horrible time making ends meet. And my heart goes out to those people, because I've been there.
Yeah.
I've been at that point when I was in Edmonton and I ate everything that come out of a can. I would wake up in the morning and eat as many French fries covered with as much gravy as I could, because that's all I could afford for the day.
Yeah. And there are a lot of, you know, from a prospecting standpoint, you know, engaging right now is a little bit different, like you're talking about. I mean, you've got to have that empathy. And I think the empathy piece is important no matter what time period we're in, but especially when you're going through a pandemic, such as what we're going through right now, the empathy becomes really important, especially on the sales side.
I got to tell you, showing high self-interest in a marketplace like this, I don't know. I think we should be leaning into our customers, trying to help them out. If there's challenges around payment or whatever, work with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Work with them, because we're all in this together. There's no, so you and I are on a Zoom call here, but we might as well be standing 2 feet apart.
Yeah.
Because we're thinking the same thing at the same time. We know what a challenge this is. And so I think this may be one of the great levelers in our lifetime, because the only time we've had something like this happen, this magnitude, were the First and Second World Wars. But there's no bombs going off. We're just being asked to stay home.
Yeah.
And I know people are having a tough time, but when I see billionaires get on TV and tell everybody how bad it is, I kind of think, geez, look, you're probably going to get 3 squares today.
Oh yeah. One thing I was thinking about as well was, I was talking with a customer yesterday. We were on the phone, and one thing I've learned to do is I've learned how much I really don't need during this time period, that I would, just go out and consume and really sitting around thinking about, hey, well, I'm actually able to make it with this.
Yeah, you're exactly right. My son was a professional chef. I love to cook. So for me, this whole idea of making my own food right now doesn't really bother me at all. As a matter of fact, I'm, just making things simple.
Yeah.
Sales should be that way. If you really want to make sales really real, I had a colleague say this to me, a number of years back, and it just resonated so deeply. You think back to the days when farming was the big industry. How would farmers solve problems? Well, they might meet over at the side of a rock fence. One farmer looks over the next farmer and says, how's it going? Not too bad, but I'm having a little bit of problem with my feed mixes, and not fattening up those cows fast enough. Oh, yeah. Really? Well, I'll tell you what, once I get done chores here, I'll come over, we'll have a look at what you're doing. He said, okay. He said, I'll bring my boys over too. If you got any extra little things you need done, you tell them what they need to do, and then we'll look at your feed and we'll get that fixed up. And then we'll sit down and we'll have a glass of lemonade. How's that sound? Your missus make good lemonade? My missus makes good lemonade.
Yeah.
Right? Sales should be like that.
Yeah.
It's just, it's just getting together and saying to somebody, where are you now and where do you want to go? And let me fill that gap. Let me help you with your mission.
Yeah. That current state to the future state.
That's right. That's where you show extraordinary value. That matters.
That's another interesting topic as well. And you touch on it in the book as well, about the sales professional today has to have that business acumen, has to have all of those things you were talking about as a trusted advisor. Mm-hmm. To be that sales professional. And I think that's a requirement now. You have to have that business acumen, that ability to help customers solve problems, not just someone that's dropping off a brochure and waiting on a call back.
No. Do you know what? A lot of companies have been compressed, and there's going to be even more compression after what we're going through. It's going to happen because a lot of companies are going to learn how it is they can sell doing things differently. And what's happening with our customers is they look like they've got a lot of tools, but sometimes they don't have a lot of tools. So the guys that are in the, in the buying department, or they're in the procurement department, they might be running on really thin budgets, meaning personal budgets,
Right.
and really, if we don't need it, we're not going to buy it. We need it, buy it smart. And so when you bring in great ideas to those customers and give them a competitive edge in the marketplace, even if it's just for a month, they're going to love you. They're going to love you, because they're going to be able to go in and they're going to be able to say to their team, wow, I just talked to this guy, John. He's mind blowing. You wouldn't believe what he just showed me. And I think we got an edge for a month. A month? Well, that's so cool. We're going to crush budgets.
Yeah.
If you get into that helper mind state and you understand the whole concept of not having a continuing call, but having an advancing call, the advance is where you're filling that gap from where they are to where they want to be. Otherwise, you're doing laps. It's also qualifying customers too. Make sure you're dealing with the right customers.
Yeah.
Don't waste your time with customers that are never going to buy. They're vampires.
Yeah. They just eat up your time.
Yeah, they're time vampires.
Yeah. And I'm guilty of that as well. Of, you hang on to that prospect that, whether intentionally or not, they lead you on like, yeah, they're going to buy. Well, 6 months to a year in it, and you're still back to, well, we're waiting on a decision, or, we're still getting the budget corrected. Stuff you should have found out, like you just said, way back in the qualification and the discovery process.
Yeah, don't be afraid to ask hard questions.
Yeah.
Don't do it. You don't want to be the rabbit. You get all the greyhounds chasing rabbits, man. You don't want to be the rabbit.
Yeah. The tortoise wins that race all the time.
You want to have the right conversations with the right people, and you want them to be honest, and everybody has to know they have to be profitable. I mean, one of the things I try to help people understand in the whole area of negotiation is that if you sign a leaky deal, in other words, there's not much profit in it, implementation is not going to be pretty.
Yeah.
Service is not going to be pretty, because your own people will resent it.
Right. You've skimped, and you can't provide that service because you can't afford to do it.
You got to pay your employees too.
Right.
Everybody's got to get paid. Everybody's got to eat.
Yeah.
If you're not making any money, you're just barely keeping the troops alive.
Yeah. It's a great point.
It's got to be meaningful. This is where I think that, when we get talking about things like collaborating with customers, I like to sort of say, I create unique solutions for unique customers, because nobody wants to be treated the same as everybody else. They just don't.
Yeah.
When I go in to buy a pair of glasses, I want somebody to sort of, give me that time to sort of say, Mr. Tinney, this is the way glasses should look on you, as opposed to here's a pair of glasses. And the other thing is when you're selling benefits, you want to sell benefits on steroids. Don't say, oh yeah, I sell trucks and they come in blue. No.
Right.
No, you want to say, man, you can drive this truck hard. This dog can hunt.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
You want to assure them that, we've done all the back testing. We know what the payload is. We know the durability of the products that we put within these trucks.
Right.
We know when you're going to have to pull them over. And by the way, we want to make sure your drivers are safe.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because everybody's got a truck. Every manufacturer's got a truck that they lease, sell. They do a full service lease. You've got to create that value and add value. You're absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, and you talk about it in the book, you commoditize yourself. And, unless you're Walmart or Google, nobody's really good at the price game. You just don't win.
I actually walked into a company. It was like a nightmare. They were buying business to stay alive.
Yeah.
It was a nightmare. I had to get out. They were the wrong customer.
Yeah.
I don't negotiate that way. I mean, when I think about negotiation, I'm a bigger piece of the pie negotiator. So this whole idea of everybody's going to sit around a table and say, "Oh, Johnson's a cool guy. I'm going to push another 5 points across the table at him."
Yeah. Good luck.
You're dreaming. Here's the deal. Buyers get paid to lower prices. Sellers get paid to maintain profitability and grow sales. They get paid for conversions. They get paid bonuses not to lose money.
Yeah.
If you're one of these guys, and I've been out with senior managers, right, where I just feel ill at some of the deals that they've signed. Because, when you work in a corporate setting, you're under the microscope. People are watching you. They want to know that you're the best representation of their product in the marketplace. They'll often go out, if your senior management team is really smart, they every once in a while they should just go out and visit all of their largest customers and just say, how are we doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, because here's the, and I think I mentioned this book. If not, there's another one. If you run into a really difficult problem where the buy team and the sell team can't solve the problem, and they're at an impasse and they're deadlocked, that may be the time for the CEO of your company to call the CEO of their company and just say, "Listen, could we have just sort of a one-on-one, just to chat?" Because you'd be surprised how everybody's got similar worries. The buy side's worried about risk. The sell side needs to know that, they're appreciated and not a commodity. It's a relationship.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. All right, I've got one more question for you, but before we get to that last question, the book, Perpetual Hunger, Patrick Tinney, the author, best-selling author, the other book, Unlocking Yes, Sales Negotiation, Lessons in Strategy. You need to run to the Amazon store on your computer and get both of these books. Exponential Return. Get these books, run and do that today. Where else can they get in touch with Patrick Tinney? What's the best place for our listeners to get in touch with you?
Yeah, well, you can go to my website, which is centroidmarketing.com. You can link up with me on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn for just sort of being able to look at what people do. It's how you and I come to meet, and
Yep.
And I'm blessed to have bumped into you.
Absolutely.
One more thing is I'm launching book number 3 in about 2 weeks, and it's called The Bonus Round, and it's all about corporate sales. It's helping people level up to that next entity. When I was selling in the mid 1990s, my territory was 35 million plus a year.
Wow.
A large deal for me was $13 million with one signature.
Wow.
If you think money doubles every 7 to 10 years, now think about what those numbers look like.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, Moneyball.
Yeah. So Centroid Marketing, he's got a new book coming out. Patrick Tinney, best-selling author. Last question for you. So you've got a jar of vitamins, but you can only give this sales professional one vitamin. What's the one vitamin you give him? What's the one piece of advice you give him or her? And that's all you can give them is one vitamin. What do you tell that sales professional?
Vitamin C.
That's right.
Vitamins are good. we don't survive without them. We know that. And it's no different in sales. If you don't feed your sales brain, it will go hungry. It'll start doing things that aren't going to make you money. See, here's what I hope people do. I hope people are able to elevate themselves so they can live their sales dreams. You don't want a job. There aren't jobs anymore. We live in a world where selling is now a craft, and you want to be in the top 10%, the top 5% of those sales professionals. That's where you want to be. Aim high. What do you got to lose? If you miss, you just missed just below the perfect target. But if you don't try, you're never going to get there. I think it was Wayne Gretzky said, you'll miss 100% of all goals that you don't shoot the puck at.
That's right.
Michael Jordan, how many times did he miss?
A lot more than he made.
Yeah. Tiger Woods, they call him Woods because he's in the woods a lot.
Yeah.
We've seen him get out of more pickles. Phil Mickelson, oh my God. Phil the Thrill. But
Yeah.
Here's the thing. What do all these people have in common? They embrace positive risk. They believe in themselves. They're creative. They unscript. They do things that people aren't going to expect, and they expect more of themselves. They're professionals, right to the teeth.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Great vitamin there. Great sales vitamin. Well, to the listeners, hope you've enjoyed this episode. And Patrick Tinney is the author, Perpetual Hunger and Unlocking Yes. Make sure you run and get those. And thank you for your time. I've learned a lot. Just talking with you, I know the listeners will as well. So certainly appreciate it. And I know your time's valuable, so appreciate it. And thank you for spending time.
Well, you know what? Thank you for the opportunity. I know how much work you put into doing what you're doing and what you're giving to